I'm here with Marianne Perlak, who is a wonderful artist, and she had a long and storied career as a bookmaker and an art director, and now she makes sculptures out of both books and wood, and you can probably help me a little bit, Marianne, and describe your work a little bit better than that.
Yes, well, I'm working in a couple of different modes, which is not unusual, and I do feel that a lot of it has some connection to the work that I did as a book designer. That sense of repetition and rhythm really rings through in the work that I've been doing since then, and a lot of my work for the last 10 years actually has been what I call my wall sculptures, and one behind me here, are very connected with that sense of repetition. To me, they're connected with music and pattern and rhythm and that life beat even of your thumping heart. They hearken to musical instruments. And I remember going to the MFA in Boston and seeing that room with old musical instruments maybe 20 years ago, and I think it stuck in my head forever and ever and ever. I kept thinking about those magnificent shapes, wood and metal, and I honestly think, all of those things come together. The repetition of book work, the love of that wonderful room of old musical instruments. And I love materials. I love to handle materials. I think going from computer book work and wanting to work with my hands was a major influence in coming in this direction. So the pieces that I've done, almost all of them have that sense of musicality. Talking about all the influences that I think have brought me to this stage, and what I did before, the love of materials, that sense of repetition, which is just a quirk of mine, which I think goes back to childhood, where I had this slight compulsion, obsessive compulsiveness to count steps and all. And thank God I got over this, but in a way, I do think some of that turns back up in some way. I feel great comfort in repetition. So here we are, and turning it to something that is, I hope, uniquely mine. I started with, and you saw some of these pieces, much earlier pieces where I used rough wood and metal and things and just took it as is and hammered them all together. And now I will take some of those old pieces, but I have woodworking equipment, and I start to create the wood exactly the way I want it to appear. Subtle painting, but still keeping some of the natural elements and colors in the piece.
Are your woodworking skills something that you have just taught yourself over time out of necessity? Is there a set of skills that you set out to grab? How did you come about those?
Yes, and I wish I had better skills than I do. I'm kind of self-learning, and my father was a carpenter, and he built houses, and he worked with his hands, and he was very good at this, but it didn't occur to him to teach his daughter, and it didn't occur to me to ask him to teach me. And ironically, since his passing, I have some of his tools that I've taken from his shop, and I always wonder, what in the world would he think of what I was doing right now?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Do you find yourself using his tools, or do you incorporate them into your art as found objects?
Actually, both. And in my main studio, some of my first pieces were a lot of the materials that I took from his workshop. Paintbrushes, oil cans, because he just did a little bit of everything. And these things I've made a few pieces out of that. And then I kept the useful tools, and I would use those. So, yes, it's coming back.
That's super cool. So will you tell me a little bit about the books that are behind you?
And the books. Again, seems like a natural thing to do if you've been designing books for so long. And wanting to express that feeling of rhythm, mathematical aspect of book design, very much so. And I enjoyed that part of designing books, to design a page and to work with type And you're always figuring mathematically how things are proportionally they are going to work out. And it just was, for me, an extremely natural progression to turn those aspects of working on a book into three-dimensional books that incorporate the same sorts of problem solving, but end up in a very different fashion.
So will you tell me a little bit about when you were planning this studio,
Yes.
were there certain things that you were like, the studio has to have this or I can't live without it?
As much space as possible. I would be happy if this was 3 times as large. You can appreciate that.
Absolutely.
It's never enough table space, or storage space. I would like to have like 6 miles long and what I did was put as many table surfaces available so that I could keep a few things going at a time. That's just fantastic, just to be able to walk from here to there and do something else. So.
Cool. Do you have any, last question, do you have any advice sort of on things that have been really useful to you on your artistic path that you would tell other people who are interested in making a life as an artist? Pursue these things, go after them.
Oh boy, advice. Persistence, persistence, and a willingness to really keep your mind open and experiment, because you're always looking for that which is unique to you. So you're always keeping yourself open to what it is in your life, in your past, in your likes and dislikes that you are inadvertently or unknowingly bringing to your work. And I think you have to try 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional, try all kinds of mediums, because you just never know which of those will express yourself best.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marianne.